All right, we're live on Facebook as well. So, welcome everyone. So, today we're going to talk about fuck happiness. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Tina and I am a happiness coach. And you might be wondering, what the hell are you talking about? Fuck happiness. Well, some of my favorite people were, I came across one of their posts today and they're talking about one, they don't know if they are happy, they don't know if they are, and also, the mentality of fuck happiness, just do the work, right? And I'm like, I totally appreciate that. I totally get that. I love that. I've done that myself. However, I want to offer an alternate view, right? I bet I can make you feel jaded. Yeah, I probably don't need help feeling jaded. In fact, the whole point of what I teach is to help you move from those jaded feelings, that depression, that anxiety, that anger, that frustration, that sadness, and move into a happier state. And I do this by two ways. One, I share some of my experience and the trauma that I've been through and how I've healed through that. And I also provide change management tools that I used in the corporate environment that help not only with negotiations, and a lot of times I did negotiations for people that actually did not want to be on board with the things that we were wanting them to do. So being able to help them through that process and to shift their perspective and to see things in a different way is part of the change management process, to help somebody have different feelings and different viewpoints to be able to get through that kind of stuff, right? And it takes a lot of work to be able to do that. So when I say fuck happiness, or um, asking the question, I wouldn't say that I'm happy or it's mutually exclusive or you don't need happiness to be successful. I absolutely friggin' agree. But here's the question that I would pose to you is, why do you feel that they are mutually exclusive? Why can you not be happy and successful? Why does it have to be that it's so much pain? Why is it that, is that the only way? Or is it that we haven't taken the time to figure out a way to bring the two together? And I believe that it is possible to bring both of those together. And I've done it in small ways. And so for me, when somebody says that, to me, I think that they have a limited mindset. They have a lack mindset. They have made a decision based on a belief that you cannot get to the pinnacle of success without immense pain and agony and suffering and all of that kind of stuff, and you can't be happy doing it. So it's through doing that work that you become happy. And to a point, I agree with that, that it is putting in the work that gives us a sense of satisfaction. But let me ask, why is it that so many times that people get to achieve those successes and they feel zero happiness? And when I look at this particular subject and I think of things like, um, you have to put in this work, you have to suffer, you have to go through all this stuff. And I think if you just work to live and not live to work, you find some personal satisfaction. Yeah, there's different ways to bring that happiness in, but I think it's a lot of times is um, we have come across walls or barriers, and instead of finding a solution to it, we just assume that that door is locked, we cannot have happiness, and we just have to suffer. And that is the goal, and that is what makes you strong, and that's what makes you determined. But to me, that is really a reaction of being a trauma related situation, and it's a sign of unhealed trauma. And you might be going, yeah, well, I don't need to look at that, Tina. I've got all this stuff. And I'm like, well, how fucking happy are you? Because, I mean, clearly, in some of the most successful, compared to them, I definitely don't have the body. I definitely don't have the money. I don't have the success or the credibility, but I sure in the hell do have some happiness. And I have fought hard to be able to do that. And that is the harder work than anything else. All this other stuff is easy. And it's when I get myself to a place of being happy, everything else flows so much smoother because when I am in a happier place, I do all the best things in my own best interest that help serve me rather than having to rely on these negative coping mechanisms, right? And you can turn anything that's good, you can turn working out into an addiction that warps you, right? And if it is anything becomes an addiction when we use it to avoid our feelings and our pain and to alter our reality, right? Okay, but when do you get to be sad? You absolutely, that is part of the happiness journey, right? It is knowing that there is still beauty in sadness. Because in order for you to be sad, that means you had to actually love and value someone or something enough to feel an emotional response to that situation that made you feel sad that you have lost that thing. And it is far more sad to go through life not having felt any of that deep connection, right? And so even when we go through sadness, there's beauty with that, and although it's painful, it is still something that is part of the human experience, and it's by us believing that we shouldn't feel those ways that we end up reaching for these maladaptive coping strategies. Does that make sense? Dino, question though. What? Go ahead. What's the question? Because the way I see it is the times that I've been unhappy. Yes, I have absolutely pushed down my emotions and I have paid the price for that and then had to go back and do the work that I was avoiding doing in order to be released from that. So I absolutely, I am not sitting here as a guru. I share my experience and I make a lot of mistakes. And I also am able to move myself through this fairly quickly. Um, Even though, there's um, different aspects of it, right? Yes, sadness makes sense, or yes, makes sense. Sadness is natural. Yeah, and I mean, like, would you not be concerned, say, a child, and they lost their parent? And whether it's their mom, their dad, let's say it's their favorite parent. Okay, I know there's not supposed to be one, but let's say it's the favorite parent, the one that they felt most connected to. And that child loses the parent either through death or, is taken away or something. And then that child has no sadness. What would you think is going on there? Would you not think that that's abnormal? That there's something wrong? That maybe the child's in shock? Maybe the child's in denial? That there's something seriously wrong? And yet we do this to ourselves as an adult. And the thing is we're still human beings and we just get conditioned and told that we're not allowed to feel those things. Or we've been through so much fucking trauma that we have no choice but to compartmentalize that, to turn that off, because if we actually had to feel all of the emotions associated with the trauma that we've been through, it would be too overwhelming for us. And learning how to process that, because if not, we're still walking around with it. We're still, it's still within us. and learning to be able to be free of that, I'm telling you, that is the most rewarding gift I have ever received in my life. It is worth any amount of money, any that kind of emotional freedom to be released and to get through that on the other side is the most powerful, freeing, experience that I have ever had. And I've done that without drugs or any fancy psychedelics, although, hey, they're doing research and everything. And I think as we go through and technology advances, I think all of the stuff that we think is uh, stuff that we have to suffer through, I think we're going to end up finding solutions for that. And then we'll have new challenges to deal with. It's like, okay, I wrapped my entire identity around being somebody that could suffer the most, right? That could, uh, you know, because I used to do this. I was in transport and logistics, and it's like there's no crying in freight, and you just had to be tough, and I actually got off on being the one. It's like that nothing phased me, and you could go through shitty situation after shitty situation, and I would still come out going, oh, didn't phase me, doesn't hurt, shake it off, because I work with guys, so that's what they tell you to do. So you start to adapt and you modify and you become that way. And you can only do that for so long until it's like racking up an emotional credit card, and you do have to pay the price. And I think sometimes it's like, imagine like I know they're working on all kinds of technology. They've got like machines that can do like more ab workouts than you could ever do, and you just hook it up. And imagine we get to the point where even like in the Matrix, where Neo he downloads, and he just hooks up and he downloads the program, and now he knows kung fu, right? Imagine we get to that point. Where is the suffering? There's no suffering that is needed. You just download that, or you just strap on the thing and you've got that perfect body. Now what? Now what is our purpose? Right? So this is where, and it's like, and if imagine we live long enough to see all of that, like, and we look back on our lives and we think, shit, I didn't actually have to suffer. I didn't have to go through that. That was a barbaric way of living. And we didn't have to be like this. And I could have been happy. So I think instead of asking ourselves or making a statement of fuck happiness, or asking ourselves, am I happy? It's the wrong question. I think we need to shift that is what would we need in order to become happy? What is it that you would need? And I know I have struggled with this recently myself, of being able to identify what is it that would make me happy. And sometimes, um, because of the trauma that I've been through, I know I was conditioned just not to want anything, because my abuser, if they saw that something actually made me happy, they would take it away, or they would use it to their advantage, as leverage to get me to do what they wanted. And so happiness in itself became a weapon. And so I became afraid of even wanting anything. And I avoided both as a child and as an adult, because the problem is this stuff gets conditioned into you. You don't realize you're carrying it, and then you carry this in different levels, and maybe you break through level 1 or level 2 when you do some healing work, and you realize, okay, I can be better at this area, but now there's this whole other, jumped up to a new level, and now I'm facing those challenges again about identifying what I want. And, you know, one of the things that I had experienced as a child, I'd always wanted a piano. And I went through great lengths to be able to identify, circle ads in the paper of affordable pianos that we could get and how we could afford it. I put out an action plan, and this, like, before action plans were a thing, there was no internet back then, so I had to figure this out all on my own. And I'd put together something to show my mom and her boyfriend how we could afford the piano, how we could get it, whatever objections they had of it's going to be too loud, it's too big, we can't afford it. All of those things, I worked and I tried to overcome those objections through trying to solve the problem for them. And one year I thought maybe I would be getting this piano or a keyboard, right? Like electric keyboards were coming out, and that was one of the solutions to it being too loud, that you couldn't have it in the apartment because it would be too loud, right? So it's like, hey, I can get headphones for this and we can plug it in. And so I was so excited. And I remember it was Christmas and there was this big, long, and it was really heavy gift under the tree, and it was for me. And I was so excited, and I couldn't wait till Christmas. And I finally opened that up, and it was a student desk. It was not a keyboard, it was not a piano. And I was devastated. And I remember at that point, we were at my grandmother's, and I remember at that point, I just gave up asking for what I wanted. And it wasn't something that was a conscious decision, and we don't realize that sometimes those little decisions we make, we end up painting a lot of this in our lives, in different areas, and we don't even realize we're doing it because it becomes subconscious programming. And so we will turn away from things, or it may bring up anxiety or fear or depression, even if you actually get the things that you want. And sometimes people will call this self sabotage. You may sabotage being able to get them because there. I know another thing that I had been through was, um, I would get a lot of family members. If I ended up getting something nice for myself and I had something physically to show for my money when I was working, um, I got a lot of, well, it must be nice, right? Must be nice to be able to get all those things. And so I often would come up with excuses and reasons of like, well, no, I don't really have the money for this, but I put it on the credit card, right? So there was a subconscious message of I wasn't allowed to have things to show for the money that I had worked for. And so, unfortunately, most of my life, I didn't learn that lesson or dig that one out until I had frittered away quite a bit of money and hadn't really learned the value, hadn't learned anything like investing and saving. Oh, God, no. The only thing you had to work, the only thing I was taught is keep your credit rating good. And even that was challenging at sometimes because you weren't ever allowed to be able to acquire a big purchase without credit. And so you couldn't get furniture, you couldn't buy a car, you couldn't get anything, a trip, unless you had credit. So there was no such thing as being able to save, but there was always ways that we were frittering money away. And so that is kind of one of the things that it's like we get conditioned, we pick up habits, we pick up belief systems um, from our family dynamics, whether they're traumatic or not, right? Yeah, Peggy, my trauma caused me to become a people pleaser. Amen. Yes, I'm a recovering people pleaser. Some days are better than others. and and part of the reason why we become people pleasers is because trauma causes us to focus outward and not to look inward. You don't have time for personal self reflection when you live in a war zone, kind of thing, right? So I grew up in what I call as a war zone, right? Um, yeah, and I hate myself for allowing so much shit to happen. And see, I would switch that, Peggy, because that hate is you taking over and you blaming yourself for things that you were not aware of. and having more compassion, having kindness, and that was what you should have received in the first place. So when we continue to hate ourselves or criticize ourselves or belittle ourselves, I believe that's taking over where our abusers left off. And when we continue to do that, and this kind of brings me to, I see a lot of, the tougher, stronger guys on social media here, and they're, you know, hate themselves. They call themselves a piece of shit. They call themselves lazy and fat bastards and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, don't fucking do that. Don't do that to yourself, right? Because to me, there's we all carry that child part of ourselves with us, and that child is still listening, and that child is running your subconscious, right? And so if you continue to tell yourself that you're a piece of shit, that you're no good, that you're a loser, that you're fucking lazy, that you're fat, that you're terrible, and blah, 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 whatever it is, all of this negative self criticism. And while that might motivate you to, do the hard things and get through this stuff, I have to ask you, like, why do you have to take it to that level to get you to do the things that you would want to do? Unless that child part of you is still trying to prove that you're stronger than your abuser. Yeah, and that, see, the thing is what do they mean specifically by that you are being too nice? Is it mean that they believe that you're not standing up for yourself? Because, see, I think that when we are really tapped into true self love and we are naturally going to be nice, that is the normal, healthy human condition. When we look at kids that are raised in love and or even if they weren't fully raised in love and they have a loving moment, kids are naturally cuddly, naturally supportive. They want to bond with other people, right? They want to give, they want to share, they want to do all of these things unless they're taught otherwise, right? So and that comes from the conditioning that we receive. And even if there wasn't overt abuse in the life that you grew up in, have you guys ever heard the expression, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy? Well, here's the thing. If your mother, and considering it's Mother's Day, if your mother experienced trauma, if she experienced fear or abandonment or neglect from the father, right? Then she would have an immense amount of fear and insecurity. And if she was repressing that, that is going to get passed on to the children. And those children are going to experience that fear, that doubt. And the mother spends the majority of the time with the child before they're age 7. And that is where everything gets encoded to the subconscious, and we run on old programming. So learning how to go back and understand where we made certain decisions, and even if she did absolutely everything right, we as children will make certain decisions based on what we see. If you see your parents fighting about money, they haven't told you anything, they haven't said anything. Maybe they weren't even fighting, maybe they just made a comment of being a little bit short on money. But maybe you, as a child, listened to that and you took that on as a personal fault, that you shouldn't have asked for that toy or you shouldn't have asked for that extra thing. And you make a decision in that moment that you shouldn't ask for things, that you should always try to be worried about what other people have, right? And so we make decisions as children based on limited logic. So it is imperative that every human being go back and start doing inner work and see if that coding, if that programming that we received in our childhood is still running. Number one, is it still running our lives? Number two, is it still effective? Do we want to keep this, or should we actually change it? So if we grew up believing that we can't have the things that we want, is that helping us? Is that programming still happening to us? It's being able to identify, and now we don't have to go back and look at every little thing that happened in our childhood. What we have to do is look at where are we experiencing resistances today in our life today, and then where where were other experiences that were similar to that resistance, right? Um, and where did that original wound come from, right? So that could have been something at a previous workplace, and that was the first time you experienced that wound, and then you carried it on. It's like the once bitten, twice shy kind of thing. Maybe you made some certain decisions. Maybe your boss yelled at you for knocking on his door before a certain time in the morning, and you're like, oh shit, I won't do that. And so subconsciously, we do that with every boss that we have, right? And not realizing that. So one of the things I know in some of the work environments that I've been in is like um, they wanted me to run everything past them and get approval. So I would come up with the solutions and I'd have everything mapped out, and then I would go to get that final stamp of approval. And then I went to a different company and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you coming and asking me every little thing? And they saw that as insecurity on my part, and it wasn't even my nervousness. I was just repeating that this was how I was conditioned in the previous work environment, right? So we're always going through conditioning, even today, and we have to determine, is that conditioning actually working for us? Is this something we want? Is this something that we actually believe? Or is there another way, right? How do I reprogram my mind to be more proactive in my affairs? Um, and so that would depend on what it is that you're coming up against, Peggy. So, in being proactive, I think the first step in being proactive is starting to recognize the particular patterns, right? Um, yeah, you're the boss and you're seen as weak, right? And in what way? In what way do you feel that they see you as weak? Because I let people get away with things and you're passive. So are you aware of the times that where you're like, I should say something, but you hesitate? Like, do you feel like it's too much of a challenge, or is there a reason why you let things go? Okay, so they're being late. Okay. And do you personally, I know in business everything's supposed to be on time and I get that, but do you personally, do you feel like being late is a big deal? Yes, I don't know why I'm like that. Okay. Yeah. Um, so for me, I know I have some trauma around being late and on time and all those kind of things, right? Um, and I had my abuser, my one of the main abusers that I had. Sorry, I got an itchy nose. He was extremely rigid. He was very to the point where he was so controlling, and I wasn't being obedient, and for obvious reasons, because I was being sexually abused and I didn't want that, so I would try to avoid it and all of those kind of things. And so as it was just this constant mind game and battling. He would try some of the nice stuff. If that didn't work, then he would get, my other family members, my allies, to turn against me, which is very typical from a malignant narcissist, and eventually would cave down to where I had to um, give in, or I had to submit to what it was he wanted, and then he could also turn that around and blame it on me that I came to him, and that was his whole game. Now, of course, I didn't know that at the time as a child. I only understood that as I started to do some of the inner work and I started to see it from a different perspective, right? Because the problem is as children, we take on so much of that responsibility and we believe it is us that is wrong rather than the person that is treating us wrong. So one of the things that he would do is, in order to control me, he would set up these timelines of being on time, and he would come in faithfully, and I would get a spanking at 4 o'clock every day because I came home late for school from school. And the thing is the reason why I came home late from school is because I didn't want to fucking go home. And so, needless to say, it didn't matter how many times I got spanked or beaten or whatever for coming home late, it didn't solve the actual problem. And the problem was I didn't want to come home. So, you could smack me, beat me, slap me in the face, all of that kind of stuff, because all of that stuff happened to me, and I was completely defiant on that. And so now, when somebody gets too rigid with me on times, I know it does bring up these feelings of defiance in me. Now, if the stupid thing is if I can see the benefit and I understand why it's important for me to be on time, and because we have a meeting or we have a bunch of people coming in and we're having a conference, we're doing this, we're doing that, I will not only not be late, I will be fucking early because I know how important it is. But if somebody gives you stink eye because you walked into the room a minute late and they have no idea why, and they just look at you like you're a piece of shit because you were late, then no, I'm sorry, they're a fucking piece of shit because you have no context in which to judge. And that is bordering on abusive behavior, and I don't tolerate that. So I will follow the rules and I will be respectful and I will be caring about those kind of things. But um, when it becomes down to you're just doing this out of control, I need you to question, why is that so important? Why are you so afraid that if somebody shows up a minute late or 5 minutes late or whatever, and the thing is without even trying, there's this like there's this energy dynamic when you have somebody that's very rigid about time and then somebody who's relaxed. And then there's this energy dynamic that no matter how many times this person gets really upset about them being late, then the other person seems to be even worse. Like it just kind of ends up perpetuating the cycle. And the only way to do that is both parties have to look at what is their fear of either being on time, or maybe it's a reoccurring fear of being late, of what's going to happen or why is it that this is a problem, right? So it's a matter of both parties, not just the one, looking at what the problem is. And I actually went through this with a friend of mine that she was very rigid at being on time, and she would invite me over and say, hey, come on over and hang out. And I would go over and she would be like, well, I thought you were going to be here at 3. And it's like I'd get there and it's like 3:10 and 3:15, whatever. And there was nothing going on. We were sitting on the couch watching TV. And I'm like, why is this a problem? We're just coming to hang out. It's not like had dinner waiting. It's not like other people were there. So now you're being rigid about time for no particular reason other than it's a fear of abandonment wound or fear of like she had to work on her stuff, I had to work on mine, and we ended up meeting in the middle that it wasn't so bad, right? Now, of course, this is different when it's a business situation, right? But at the same time, I always, even in the companies I had worked for, if you want me to be flexible on the tail end of the day and stay and not run out the door at 4 o'clock like or 5 o'clock like the rest of the people, then I need some leeway on the start time. Now, if there's an important meeting, if there's something important, I will be there on time. However, if it's 9 or 9:15 or 9:30, some days I'd even push it even more, especially if people were squawking about it. But if you want me to be flexible with my time on the tail end because something came up and you need me to stay, then you better give me the same respect in the morning. That's how I see it, because I will stay all night. I will stay till 3 in the morning if you need me. But if you're going to cringe on me for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even an hour, and roll your eyes at me, then this is not a reciprocal relationship. This is not an equal give and take. You have no respect for me as a person and not understanding. Now, do I need to be reined in sometimes? Yes. I'm not going to deny that. But when I understand and I am happy and I'm excited, I actually show up early. I want to be there. And especially anytime we had any conferences or anything like that, I would, and I didn't know where I was going, I would show up early, right? But there have been many times I have slept in, slept through my alarm, and some of that is trauma stuff as well too, of how I've reacted, how my sleep patterns have been messed up, going through childhood, and that carries on into my adult life, and it still does today. So if I'm feeling super anxious about something, if I'm stressed about things, I don't get as much sleep, and then when I do finally fall asleep, I fall into a deep, deep sleep that I will sleep right through my alarm. I've done that a couple of times. It's it's really embarrassing when that happens. When you get a, I remember I was in my 20s and I got a call from the HR manager wondering if I was okay because it was 11 o'clock and I had slept right through. And I was like, oh my God. And it's such a powerless feeling. And it was not something that I was trying to do. It wasn't something conscious. And I beat myself up mercilessly. And that was way before I had started doing healing work and inner work and understanding the concept of being late and on time and all of that stuff and how it all ties together. So if somebody is perpetually late, then there's something going on. And this is another reason why I talk about this stuff, is that of understanding that even if you yourself haven't been through trauma, I can promise you there's somebody in your work environment who has, and if they haven't dealt with it, they may be acting out in ways that are not for their best interest or the company's best interest. And it'll cost both of you a lot of headache, grief, and emotional stress by not addressing those things, right? So it's understanding these little things, and as business owners, as leaders in business, we have the opportunity to be able to help heal a lot of people that did not get the proper support in what they were growing up in, and you don't get to choose what environment you grow up in. And bringing this stuff, and this is why I do these lives every day, is I want people to understand that they're, even if they don't think that they need therapy, they need to start looking at how their minds were coded, how they were conditioned in certain things, in certain behaviors, certain belief systems to operate in certain ways. And not addressing those emotions are creating these very difficult behavior patterns. And they don't need to be that way. When somebody truly gets the insight and they are able to make that connection to why their bad behavior over here is and how that got started and where it was connected and how it's followed them throughout their life. And they might find out that that was something from when they were 4 years old. And maybe it wasn't an actual trauma situation, but if you it's more prevalent. And for me, if you take the ACEs test, which is adverse childhood experiences, I get a 10 out of 10 on that one. Not the test I wanted to get perfect on, but it is what it is. But being able to understand this stuff and do a lot of inner work, and I did a lot of inner work in my 20s, and then as I came into my 50s, I had some more challenges that kind of came up, and I had to do a huge deep dive and dust off a lot of the tools I used in my early 20s and stuff. And I'm telling you, when I said I did a lot of work in my 20s, I mean every aspect of my life was healing and recovery and work. That was it. All of my friends, all of my social circle, my family members, we were all in some form of therapy, 12-step group, something like that. And even then, we would plan vacations together with some of the friends. Like we went on this whitewater rafting trip and it was amazing and we connected and we did all these kind of things, but we were all on this growth mindset. And I think this whole world of online entrepreneurs and everything like that, we are all very growth mindset. And being able to look at this inner stuff while it's uncomfortable, while it's messy, while you may think it's like, oh, that's so in the past. It's not your childhood. Just get over it. Just do the right actions from today, and that'll change everything. And to some extent, I agree with that, that changing your actions is something that is necessary. But if we don't actually purge the poison and understand where the root cause is and change that coding, then we will continue to, it's like only cutting the dandelions off at the stem and not digging down to the root. They're going to grow back, right? But that being said, I actually like dandelions. Dandelions are pretty. They're like a pretty bright yellow flower, and it's only because they're very strong and they're hardy, and they will actually take over. They're very dominant as a plant species, that they end up getting labeled as weeds that should be pulled out and destroyed. And it's like, wait a minute. It's like, no, there's actually some health benefits from dandelions, and yet we spend all this money trying to kill all the weeds, right? And we label that as weeds rather than appreciating a dandelion, because a dandelion can grow up through a crack in the cement. It's like, damn, they're strong, they're hardy, you got to appreciate that. They're not like a rose, they're delicate, they need the right temperature and the right soil composition and all of that kind of stuff. Dandelions, they're like, ah, fuck you, I'm still going to grow. I will live, right? So, yeah, so coming back to the subject, I hope that helps you, Peggy. Did I answer your questions at being able to understand some of that stuff? Yeah, it, I I would just, whatever challenges, and I know it can be really frustrating, especially when you come across somebody's maladaptive coping mechanism that we don't understand, or maybe we've gotten over and we can't quite understand why they can't get over it. And it's because if they don't have that safety to do that inner work. And I know I had a couple of people that they had they reported into me they had really bad bosses, and they also had a lot of trauma in their life, and that trauma was in their marriage, right? So but that didn't come up at first. It was only afterwards that I found out some of this stuff that was going on, when that employee would go home at night, and whether that is physical violence or just negative criticism. Because if somebody hasn't healed their trauma, they're going to pick partners that are similar to their abusive family members, right? Because that's familiar, that seems normal to them. And they will also try to create circumstances and situations that continue to have that normal. So if somebody is always used to being in a place of crisis and drama and stuff like that, if things are too calm, too peaceful, too routine at work, they might stir up shit just to feel like there was some sort of excitement, because that calm, that safety, maybe the only time they felt that calm and safety in their childhood was just before everything blew up. And it's kind of like the calm before the storm type thing. And I know that would happen a lot of times in my family, right? Of, things would be quiet, and then you'd be like, oh, things are not, oh, no, 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 things are not going to go well. And then next thing you know, there's this great big fight, furniture is getting broken, people are crying, all this kind of stuff that would happen. So, um, being err on the side of kindness, right? And the only way that we can do that is when we have done our own inner work. We don't have time to fight with other people when we're battling our own demons. Yeah, Peggy, if you want to talk about what it's like to work with me, you can definitely send me a DM. I'll send you a link. We can set up a time. You can talk about how we can possibly work together if that's something that you feel like you might want to explore. Um, so let me know, and I'll send you a link. You can book a time on my calendar, and we can talk. But yeah, it's really about understanding some of these things, and understanding how we can get through these different challenges. And it's only when we are in that position of security ourselves that we can offer that security to other people, right? And the thing is it's not necessarily a bad thing that somebody comes in and they're a complete pain in your ass. I know that seems weird, but here's the thing is that these situations, these experiences, they come up because we're actually ready to heal. And these opportunities that we have as an adult, of these aggravations that we experience, these pains that we have, 20% is from what's going on today, 80% is from our past. And the only way for us to heal the past is to have this aggravation come up in our present. And it's only because we're in a position where we are mentally, emotionally, spiritually strong enough to actually heal this, that it is coming up and creating a disturbance in the force, if you will, so that we can actually heal this. We are now ready to look at that. And when we heal this, when we start to do that inner work, and we are able to get through to the other side, and it now is no longer controlling us. It no longer has us tied to those past emotions, that we're able to break through that stuff by um, truly understanding what's going on, where it came from, and how to get through that. And then it becomes something that we remember, and there's no emotional drag, and it's not something that now controls us for the future. And when we can heal that stuff, we become a beacon of light and hope for other people to be able to heal that stuff as well. And that's how we can pay that stuff forward. And this is why I want to work with people that are in business, either business owners or leaders in business, to be able to heal this kind of trauma, to be able to do this inner work, because one, it's going to make you a stronger leader, and you will also get better results from your team. When you're happier and they are happier, people are much more productive. And because if you have to be that manager that is always there, cracking the whip, micromanaging, making sure, did they do this, do they do that? When people are happy and they feel secure in that, they will go above and beyond. It's only when they become frightened, and I'm not saying that it's anything the business does. It could be something that's going on at home that's causing them. But if they feel safe at work, that they can actually work through this stuff, or at least get taught some of the coping strategies in a business environment, they can take those same strategies and take them home, and they can start healing their family life as well. So this is a win-win that can actually help, whether it's personal or business, right? Way too passive, mostly happy. It's the more organized people that are at me to be strict, right? And so, yeah, Peggy, we can definitely talk about that because some of that might be you having to stand up that you don't agree with their strict protocols and being able to say, I think there's a better way that we can actually solve this. And maybe your way does work better, but they don't value it. And so you helping them shift their perspective to learn to value it and actually still produce the results that you're looking for is a way that we can actually change that. Or you can look at, okay, maybe their way is better, because I know for myself, if somebody can convince me that their way is better, then I will do that. But if it actually violates something that I value, then I'm going to be resistant to that. And so we can explore what is it that's causing some of that resistance, and what is it that you maybe either need to work at, or maybe it's a matter of, no, you're absolutely right in your process, and your process does work, but they are not valuing it. And maybe it's a matter of getting them on board, which is a change management practice, getting them on board as to why this is the better way, right? So we can definitely look at that. So Peggy, make sure that you message me, DM me, and I'll send you a link, and we can set up a time we can talk and see if that works. Okay? Yeah. And so this is what I want to say is, like, when it comes to fuck happiness, I don't think that being successful in business and being happy should be mutually exclusive. I absolutely believe that people are so much more productive when they are happy. Think of the brand new person that comes into the job, they're happy they got the job, they're excited, they want to, dive right in, and they just want to do everything they can to show that they can be an asset to the company, right? They are happy to be there, right? Compared to the guy that's been there 10 years and he's the old curmudgeon, right? That's sitting in the background going, that'll never work. We tried that before. It didn't matter. Oh, here we go again with another system, right? You get that negative Nancy guy that's in the back, and he may not be wrong. He might be 100% right, but he definitely is not happy, right? And so, and he is probably just going through the motions and not actually tapped into his full potential, because he is not experiencing happiness or joy, and he gave up on that and settled a long time ago because maybe somebody convinced him that a certain way was better, and he just stopped trying to fight the good fight and make a difference, right? And so when you have people that are happy, they actually want to make a difference, and your company can grow so much better, so much faster. And it's a matter of learning to remove the barriers that are preventing that. And I can promise you, when people feel like their contribution is valued, they are going to be so much more happy, and they are going to go above and beyond and find the things. And it's a matter of learning how to motivate the different types of people properly and how to tap into that stuff. And we do this by let it begin with me first. So we do this work ourselves first, and then we work with the team. And it's just a natural byproduct, because they will be much more likely to follow your example than listen to what it is that you say. So when they see you doing this work and they see the changes in you, the natural byproduct is they are going to want to emulate you. They are going to want to look up to you because you have actually done this work too, and they can see a positive, beneficial change in you. So, so yeah, guys, I would suggest rephrasing the question and starting to ask yourself, instead of believing and locking yourself in that you cannot be happy and successful, I challenge you. How can you be happier and successful? It's not mutually exclusive. It's time to integrate these two. So, guys, with that, I'm going to wrap up today. If you haven't seen before, please go to my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Click the subscribe button, and you'll get notified when I've uploaded these live trainings. Okay? So, hopefully that was helpful. Peggy, thank you so much for asking questions, being interactive in the live, and definitely message me and let's just chat and see if it's a good thing to work together or not. Okay? All right, guys, have a great night and we will talk to you tomorrow. Happy Mother's Day to all of those out there and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.